At this point, I'd like to introduce our two speakers for our panel. At the end of the morning, the reason why we do this, having a great place to work, representatives here, is that we really believe that having a great workplace, the evidence shows that businesses are more successful and more profitable. And what does it take to be a great workplace? And so having companies that have been recognized by a worldwide organization as being a great workplace is a great place to start. So I welcome you to start thinking about questions as you hear our presenters. The way it's going to work is that we have two executives, one Adam Randall from Habanero, who I'll introduce in a moment, and Tanya Venn from 1-800-GOT-JUNK, who are going to talk about their experience. And as you're hearing them speak, think about questions that you would, as an employer, want to ask, or what is in the way of us being a great workplace, or maybe share some of your experiences as you're maybe starting that journey. So we're going to ask each of them to present and then take a spot at the table, 10 minutes each, and then after that we'll open the floor up for questions. I'd like to introduce Adam Crandall as our first speaker, and actually Adam has spoken at a previous Pathways event. He is the Staffing and Resource Manager for Habanero. His role is integral to advancing a balanced scorecard approach to resourcing that seeks effectively balancing the financial performance, client value, and employee satisfaction. Adam ensures key stakeholders are brought into the staffing conversation at the right time, and he plays a major role in the recruitment and hiring within the organization. Since joining, or after joining Habanero in 2008, he has a number of different roles. He has a passion for technology and how it can help business achieve their goals. And Adam says when not at work, he enjoys spending time with his wife and two sons, working on his old BMW, cooking and eating, and exploring the world of bacon. So I'm really interested to hear how exactly that fits in. He also, I can understand, he also enjoys brewing beer in the backyard, which I'm not sure whether that's legal or not, and relaxing as much as possible. So quite an interesting background for Adam. So we'll be really interested in hearing his company story and maybe a little bit of his personal story as well. Our second presenter is Tanya Venn, who is Director of Public Relations for 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which I'm sure that everyone here is very familiar with that company. Has a great profile. As Director of PR, 1-800-GOT-JUNK has been recognized as one of the successful companies in Canada. Tanya has been responsible for creating an impactful awareness about the brand. Tanya joined 1-800-GOT-JUNK in 2005, and under her leadership, the PR team has celebrated many successes, and I've gone through the list here, including appearances on the Dr. Phil Show, the Dr. Oz Show, Raquel Ray, Dr. Drew's Life Changers, At Home with Lisa Quinn, Restaurant Makeover, George Stroumboulopoulos Tonight, CNN Money, and profiles in the Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Entrepreneur, Costco Connection, USA Today, Globe and Mail, and as well as the hit reality series Hoarders and Undercover Boss. In fact, the Undercover Boss episode is airing right now in the U.S. and it's going to be airing in June in Canada. So I'm going to particularly be looking forward to seeing that. And one that's not listed here is that, if you may remember, 1-800-GOT-JUNK was part of the Canada Sings competition, and so a lot of accolades and obviously character in that organization. Now, for Tanya herself, her previous experience includes several years as a broadcast news journalist, several radio stations, as a marketing manager, with a major national bookstore chain. And she says in her free time, she has two teenage children, well, one 20, I believe, and one 17, and loves to mountain climb, hike, and ski, and so she's obviously in the right place to do that. So I would ask Adam to be our first presenter, then followed by Tanya once he is finished.
So I'm going to talk about what we do to help make us one of the best places to work in Canada. But one thing I brought was Bacon Day. Seems kind of silly, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own at Habanero, and we actually have a a morning once a year, and we celebrate bacon, and we make the entire office building. We're in a 12-story building downtown in Vancouver, and yeah, bacon kind of wafts through the elevators, and the British consulate is upstairs, and I'm sure they're wondering what's going on, but I think we're going to try to invite them this year. And it is legal to brew beer in your backyard in small quantities. So as Roy mentioned, I'm the staffing and resource manager at Habanero, so I play kind of two roles. As a resource manager, I'm responsible for figuring out where all our employees, what projects they're going to be working on, what our lead times are, and I do take into account employees' preference for the types of work they're doing, their personal life, their vacation schedules, as well as the financial performance of the company or client needs. It's really about bringing all of that stuff together when we're deciding who's going to work on what. It's not just about me saying, you know, John, you're working on this project today. As the staffing manager, I'm responsible for kind of meeting all the new people who have applied, potential HABs. I'm the first person they talk to when they apply to work at Habanero. And yeah, just making sure they're moving through the process and they're enjoying what is actually a fairly long and involved process at Habanero, and that they're getting as much out of it as we are. So Habanero, what we do, well, we're an IT consulting company. We build portals. We build employee portals, or intranets as they're more commonly known, customer portals, or basically public-facing websites that have some sort of a kind of account or something that you're going to log into and do something with, and member portals, which is something like, well, like 1-800-GOT-JUNK might use for managing their franchisees, where they would log in and do whatever it is they need to do. And we do this through design. We do the full design, the implementation, and also the sustainment of the solutions. And really it's about taking what a lot of people already do. Lots of people build these things, but we're really taking an end user focus on when we build these, making them enjoyable to use, easy to use, and really trying to drive employee engagement and customer engagement when we're building these solutions. Some of the awards that we've won in the past, most recently we were named the #3 best place to work by the Best Workplaces in Canada Association, which is posted in the Globe and Mail every year. We also were given the #1 for Pride and Fairest Place to Work. Last year we were 4th, and we also had Fairest Place to Work last year. Just recently, last week, we got named the best place for millennials in Alberta from the Best Places to Work in Alberta Association. BC Business #5 in 2011, and we just keep working on staying on the list. And really, it's about, that's an outcome, that's a measure we use. It's not the end goal. And so everything we're doing with our employees on a daily basis, this is how we measure it, because all we can ask them to do is respond to these surveys. If they don't feel like it, if there's low engagement, that's telling us something. So, oh, and I should just mention, we've got, it's at the bottom of that list, but we have less than 2% attrition. We have very low turnover. As a consulting firm in a fairly competitive marketplace, we focus on SharePoint. We actually post everyone's names, emails, phone numbers, and their bios on the website, every single person that works at our company, and none of our competitors do that. And there's probably a reason, and it's really easy for people to call our employees and ask if they want to go work somewhere else, but we still, we don't worry about losing them. So we're going to talk about a few things here. Some of the stuff that we do to make us, to make our employees feel we're one of the best places to work. Perks and benefits, our performance management framework, our hiring process, how we collect feedback for employees, and our values and purpose, and how that plays into that. So really this all starts with hiring. So for me, I feel a lot of, I guess, accountability in what I do on a daily basis, because if our hiring process leaves a bad taste in people's mouths or just doesn't feel good to them, that's going to be a big black mark on us right away. But the more important part of that is also just the time we spend. The average applicant that comes through Habanero and actually gets hired spends about 15 to 20 hours with us in interviews before they actually get an offer letter. And it's about two things: us really getting to know them, whether they'll fit in, also for them to get an idea of if they will fit in with us. And it's not just about the cultural fit, that's very important, but it's also about the role. We very often meet people that would be amazing to work in our company, but the role isn't quite what they're looking for. And so there's a worry there that they'll have very low engagement. Sometimes people just want to get into habanero, and they'll say they'll take anything, but we really try to avoid that. So our hiring process is very important and very involved. We take a strengths-based focus when it comes to management. We have a very flat structure, which I'll talk about, but basically we're looking at people's strengths, like why focus on what they're not good at, right? Let's focus on what they're good at, spend our time making them even better in those areas. And what that allows us to do actually is, I've got slice and dice roles there. So we have very non-traditional career paths, and we actually try to remove any kind of traditional markers of a career at Habanero. There's not a typical ladder that you're going to climb and kind of get to the next level of management. We actually only have one level, and that's the president of the company. So it's a very flat structure. But what we'll do is we'll actually look at someone's strengths and what they want to work on. And so we're a project-based organization, so we have project managers, business analysts, developers, and whatnot. People don't always fit into those buckets perfectly, so we try to slice and dice those roles, and people will kind of straddle a couple roles, or we look at what they're strong on and what they want to do, and kind of create a specific role just for them. And I think that kind of speaks to why we have really low attrition, because people can easily find something else they want to do within Habanero. So by doing that, we create really meaningful career paths. So people are working with their performance managers to decide what they want to do. And then it's a matter of them working together to figure out what the path is. Like, how are they going to get there within Habanero? I'm a perfect example of that. I started at Habanero 4 years ago as a ASP.NET web developer. And I used to work for myself, and I always had a keen interest in working with people and hiring and just kind of the business side of the business. And I made that clear, and 4 years later, here I am. And that took a few different role changes and just taking on different responsibilities, but there's a lot of communication with different people within the organization. It's about equality. Everyone's treated, like, really, lots of people say this, lots of companies say this, everyone's treated equally. There's, we don't promote people because they've been there the longest, right? Everyone is on a daily basis evaluated equally. And just because you're the best developer in the room doesn't mean you're going to be the head of the development department. We're looking for kind of natural leaders, people who are going to kind of step up and take on this responsibility. And they could have been there for a week, or they could have been there a decade. There's a very high level of autonomy, and we actually measure this on probably 3 or 4 times a year. We send out a little survey to all the employees to figure out, like, how are they feeling? Do they feel like they have control over their day-to-day? We have a very, like I said, very little management structure. So it relies on people understanding what their accountabilities are and what other people's accountabilities are, and giving them the freedom to figure out how they're going to accomplish those accountabilities. And so that's why we measure autonomy on a regular basis. So our purpose, we exist to help people and organizations thrive. And so why is this important? Actually, does everyone know what their company purpose is? I guess a lot of people here work for TRG, but nobody? So our company purpose is something we talk about on a daily basis. And actually, it's very important. Everyone knows what it is because they help create it. When we came up with it was really a new purpose about a year ago, we went out and we just talked to everyone in the company. Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you come to work? What do you like about Habanero? What is it that really makes this the place that you want to work? What is it about the work you're doing that keeps you so engaged? And this is what we came up with. I think having a strong purpose that people can say, yeah, that tells me why my job is important. Like, I can actually look at that and I understand why my job matters, why my role within the company matters is very important. And so that's why we put a lot of stock on this and make sure everyone understands it. And you know what? If it needs to change in 5 years, then we change it as things change. Okay, so our performance management framework. This is one of the things we talk about at Habanero when we're first meeting a new candidate, and it gets people really excited. So again, we don't have this management layer, but there's performance managers. So that works in basically everyone has a performance manager, and that could actually be a peer. So it could be another developer that they're working with on a project. It could be anyone in the company, really. And that person's responsibility is, yes, like, if there is a problem, which is fairly rare at Habanero, they're going to be the ones to kind of deal with that and get the conversations going to figure out how we resolve that. But more importantly, it's about that career path and being the advocate for their career path at Habanero and beyond. So they're going to work with that person to figure out what their long-term goals are, what that translates into short-term goals. And we're actually meeting with their performance managers once a month. How many people here meet just to talk about their careers and their goals on them just once a month, just about them with a performance manager? Okay, that's usually I get told it's once a year, maybe every 6 months. So it's once a month at the very minimum. And then we also do quarterly reviews. And really that's about collecting feedback. Performance manager goes out, gets feedback from the people they've been working with, or the person themselves will go talk to those people. And we have very open, honest, and frank conversations around that. And people feel comfortable collecting their own feedback and relaying it to their manager, their performance manager. And then we do a review once a year. It's really about having clear accountabilities. We have, everyone has what we call an accountability agreement. It's something that they craft for their performance manager. It's something that's public and available on our intranet, and anyone at any time can find out what someone else is accountable for, and the idea is that we can hold each other accountable, which is really necessary when you don't have managers kind of running around telling people what they need to be doing or making sure they're doing those things. Openness, trust, engagements, and kind of a choice of what kind of projects they're working for. Those are all things the performance management framework helps support. And it's about two-way feedback, so we're constantly figuring out ways. It could be face-to-face, but a lot of the times it's anonymous surveys trying to collect feedback on how the organization is doing. Are the award surveys definitely help us with that. And also we'll send out just internal, we send out internal surveys once a quarter. There's 12 questions on the survey, and it's really measuring like how engaged our employees are and how they're just feeling about their work and working at Habanero. It's very simple. You don't need hundreds of questions. And the last one, which is the most important, is, you know, are you happy working at Habanero? And would you refer a friend to work here? It's kind of like what you'd ask your clients, right? Okay, so the perks. We have, it's nothing crazy, right? We have your typical health insurance, which you guys are all very familiar with. Health spending account for stuff that's not covered under there. We have a technology allowance. We're all into technology a lot. We like our gadgets, so there's money that people get every 3 years they get to spend just on technology. We have RSP matching, flu shots. We do Bike to Work Week and other events. Our kitchens are stocked with organic produce and other snacks, and whatever we can to keep people fed well, but not too well. And we do Friday lunches. Every Friday, lunch is brought in both our offices, and we have a fitness allowance too. So it's money every year people can spend on just services, gym memberships, ski passes, golf green fees, whatever it is. We have no limit to sick days. We don't, like, it's not in an offer. Like, people are sick, we want them to stay home. And I actually just pulled up, we can run reports on this pretty easily. We pulled up for the last 12 months, we're at 1.36% of all our time is for sick days in the last 12 months across the organization. So someone here could probably tell me what the average is, but I think it's a little higher than that. And we celebrate our successes, and this is probably one of the most important things. We work really hard. There's stressful situations. Sometimes at the end of projects, there's huge crunches, and you got to celebrate. There's got to be a reason why we're doing this. And most recently, with our third best place to work, we had everyone from Calgary. We have an office in Calgary as well. Come into Vancouver, and we spent the entire day. There was go-karting, there was bike riding, there was a whole day of fun activities. Nobody worked, and then we had a big party at the end of the night, which we're also really good at. So there's a lot of slow mornings on Saturday. So things we're celebrating are project completions, awards, breaking records, anniversaries. Habiversaries are always announcing like when people have been there yet another year, and it's a celebration. So just try to make it as fun and as lively as possible at all times. And there's Bacon Day. That's a good celebration too. So what are the benefits of doing this? I mean, we mentioned the awards. I wouldn't say that's a benefit. That's a measure. That's something that we can use to tell us if we're doing our job right. But really we have a very highly engaged workforce. Our people love coming to work. They know what they're doing. They take on new responsibility. They are constantly looking for new ways to improve and do things better, and it doesn't take a lot of kind of from the top down push to get that stuff to happen. Highly creative, people are, like I said, always thinking of new things. We can allow a very flexible workplace. Our hours are very flexible, our sick days, stuff like that, without having to worry about people taking advantage of it. It just doesn't happen. And just happiness. So, you know, people, we hear it all the time, like people, they spend a lot of time at work, right? And this is one of the things that I always said is, I want to work somewhere where when I'm at work, I don't want to have to go home and feel like, you know, you always see like the people that are stressed out from work, they go home and they end up, you know, they take it home, they take it on their family without even realizing it. You want to be working at a place where you go in every day and you don't worry about, is that person going to frustrate me today? Am I going to be stressed out by that stupid problem? Like, what are the politics going to be? We don't worry about these things.
My name is Tanya Venn. I'm Director of PR at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and it's a pleasure to meet you all today and talk to you a little bit about building a great workplace. So from our perspective, we have been on the best companies to work for in BC list. We were number 1 a couple of years in a row. Then we were number 2. We were number 8 at one point. We've been number 9. Last year we were number 2 in our category again. And we've also been with the great workplaces in Canada. We've been number 2. We've been number 62. We were number 30 this past year, and it's always a work in progress. We've gone out for 50 most engaged workplaces, and we scored number 1 in our category on that. We've been on the World Blue most democratic places to work list. So it goes on and on. It's a lot of fun. It's a great engagement tool. We love doing surveys and just assessing how we're doing as a company. So building a great workplace the 1-800-GOT-JUNK way is the focus today, and what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of history about the company, very briefly, just to put into context my presentation today. So if you know a little bit about the story, I apologize. I'll be brief. So 1-800-GOT-JUNK actually has been around since 1989. It was founded by our founder and CEO, Brian Scudamore, when he was just 18 years old. He'd never worked for anyone before. He was actually a high school dropout, and he was looking for a way to fund his way through university. Of course, he had to talk himself into college before he could actually start taking classes because he was a high school dropout. And as the story goes, he was in a McDonald's restaurant, 18 years old, and looking for something to do, thinking of getting into business when he did get into university. And he saw this old, dilapidated junk truck rumbling through the drive-thru. And it had junk all falling out of the back, and it had a plywood sign on the side that said Mark's Hauling. And he took one look at that and was motivated. And the very next day, he went out and he invested all of his life savings, which is, I think, $700, and he decided to buy a junk truck and go into business, and he thought he could do it better. And so he founded the Rubbish Boys. And there he is. Now, little did Brian know, and of course he didn't have much experience, he had no intention of doing this on a long-term basis. He just wanted to pay for college. What he ended up doing was professionalizing an industry that really was nothing more than a fragmented landscape of mom and pop shops right across Canada and the United States. And today, he has built out the world's largest junk removal company with franchises throughout Canada, the US, and Australia. And of course, now we are known as 1-800-GOT-JUNK. But for the purpose of our talk today, it's back in these early days that our reputation as a great workplace really got started. And in fact, it can be traced back to one specific incident. It sounds a little bit harsh, but one day when Brian was, midway through his days owning the Rubbish Boys, he let go of his entire staff. And this was pretty risky because he was at $1 million in revenue for the year. He had 6 trucks on the road in Vancouver, and he had 11 staff. But what he found, and he tells the story, I'm sure, better than I can, but increasingly there were a couple of people who were dragging the whole team down, okay? So he had some great people working for him, but together it just wasn't working, and he was really looking for people who could help him, because he didn't have a lot of experience, and were passionate about what he wanted to build. They wanted to build something together. So he took a big risk, and he let go of everyone and started from scratch. But what's really important here, and it's important to what I'm talking about, is that he made a vow at that point to never, ever again compromise on the quality of the people that he brought into the organization. And at that time, he founded our philosophy, It's All About People. And he also came up with 4 core values that we still espouse today. And those are passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy. We call it PIPE, because we're big on acronyms. So being a great workplace is really a foundational concept at our company. And the founder and CEO and every single member of the leadership team have to be a role model for this to work. Most of us, in fact, who have been with the company for any length of time have kind of grown up at the junction knowing that the company is all about people. It's what we know. So if you're looking today for some, concrete programs of how we've sought to roll out this amazing workplace, we don't actually have a lot to offer. We've got great things that we offer our employees, but I don't have any silver bullet for you is what I'm trying to say. Instead, what I want to do is share with you how we've become a great place to work by focusing on what's most valuable, and that is our people. So it's consistently all about people, and we actually have an IAAP, It's All About People committee that helps to support this. It's made up of leadership team members and regular employees, call center employees, who all get together and report back to the leadership after speaking with people, how things are going, what can we do to improve. So that IAAP committee is continually going on. So it's about hiring the right people who share those core values that I just mentioned about PIPE, who have a strong work ethic, and who align with our visions for the company. So it's kind of rolling up the sleeves, getting the hard work done. Sure, we play hard as well, but we're all working toward a common goal, and we're passionate about it. And then once you have the right people, you want to care for them and treat them properly. You trust them. You practice transparency in all you do and great communication in all you do. And if you make a mistake, you fess up and you do better next time. And that's really our philosophy with that. So these are qualities that are practiced throughout our leadership team, and we talk about them a lot, and they're filtered throughout the organization. So how can a company arrive at this level of workplace engagement? Well, it does require taking small steps. Luckily for us, we have a founder who started this many years ago. These qualities are really, I guess you could say, woven into the fabric of our organization. But let me get into a few details of what our workplace looks like. From the front reception area here, as you move into our office space, you can see it's a very open concept, and that's really important. Actually, since I've been with the company, we've worked in 3 different spaces, and all of them, the key thing we're looking for is a space that can accommodate everyone, that can make us feel good, but that's also got a really open concept. We do have meeting rooms, and they're on the perimeter of this open space here. I don't have a photograph for you, but they're all visible inside, so they're all glass walls. There's no kind of hidden behind door, secret meetings going on. Of course, we do need privacy, and so we do have those meetings, but the idea is that they're open. We have no offices. We do have a very large desk in the center of the junction, and that's actually Brian on the right-hand side there. He and our COO sit there regularly when they're working here at the junction, and they conduct phone interviews. They hold their meetings there. They strategize on the direction of the company. Sometimes we even have lunch there, and it's all designed to promote a feeling of openness and equal accessibility and opportunity. We have positive motivational messages scattered throughout the junction. We even have a Can You Imagine wall, and you can't see everything there, but those are dreams that employees have come up with for the company. And the idea is that, you come up with a great idea. If you can conceive it and believe in it, you can achieve it. And so we really encourage people to do that. We also have a timeline. It's a colorful decal timeline, and actually we probably have, I'm going to guess, about 50 milestones, all with a photo, and they're timelined and decaled across the office, and they highlight the key successes in our company. So we see on a daily basis things that remind us of why we're a great place to work and how we got where we are. It's also actually a guide that we use for our tours. We open our offices for tours to local businesses and businesses abroad. who'd like to come in, who've maybe seen Brian speak and want to hear some best practices or maybe learn something from something we do. And of course, we learn a lot from the people that come in for tours. We hold them every other Friday in the morning. They start at 10 and they include a couple of the things that I'm going to talk about next. And they end usually with a Q&A with Brian if he's in, or another member of the leadership team. And if you're interested, it's tours at 1-800-GOT-JUNK.com, or you can ask me about it a little later. All right, so this next slide shows something that we love to do every day. It's called Daily Huddle. And Daily Huddle is a daily stand-up meeting. It's mandatory, actually, for everybody who's at work that day and the call center staff if they're not on the phones. And it's just an opportunity to share good news, and also for our franchise partners, because we do record Huddle, and they get to see it if they would like. So we share metrics, good news, personal good news, professional good news. We get a sense of what's going on with the teams that we work with. We all come together, and that's the most important thing. We do it at 10:55 every day, and you know, it's kind of a rah-rah, get you on for the rest of your day. We're very efficient in the morning, and when it gets to the late morning, just before lunch, I think sometimes you have a little bit of a lag, and this is one way to get us going. So we always end with a cheer, and usually we try to make it about a franchise partner, so we want to include them as well. Now, a key part of our people philosophy, of course, is coming together, showing our creativity, our talents, our innovation. I know we talked a little bit earlier about Canada Sings, and I happen to have this slide here, because I think it really speaks to something we do very well, and that is getting together and celebrate what we're all about. And we do have talent. I'm sure every single one of you out there, maybe you don't realize it, but you work with a lot of talented people, whatever it might be. And so for us, we created this group called the Junk Notes, and we went all out to Canada Sings, and we actually won, which was really exciting. And we were able to, I'll just mention, we have a franchise partner in here, we have truck team members, and we also have members of our corporate office. So it includes everybody. And we were able to win $10,000 for autism. So we got to put that money from our winnings to the charity of our choice, which is a great segue into my next slide, because we are very charitable together, which I think is really important as well. The first slide actually shows some children in Africa who were the recipients of laptops that our franchise partners collected and sent over as part of a project called Project Red Dot. And so that's, I really can't think of a better way to celebrate than doing something like that. And it really is, it's just an amazing achievement that we were able to help out those kids. And then, of course, Yard Sale for the Cure is an amazing charity that raises awareness and funds for breast cancer research and treatment. And many of our franchise partners have been involved, and people at our corporate office. It's a great charity because it's very simple. It's the stuff that you no longer need, which we collect daily in our business, and we put together yard sales, and we raise funds. And so actually, Yard Sale for the Cure happens at the end of May every year, and our Toronto franchise this year has a very lofty goal to raise $30,000 in one day with their yard sale. It's a huge yard sale. So one of the great things that we do to improve workplace culture, and this is something that I would encourage a lot of companies to do, especially if you don't have a professional development plan or you're in the process of putting one together. We've had different iterations of our professional development plan, and there have been times where we couldn't afford to, put out a big plan to help develop our people. And what we've done is put together a mentorship program. So it's very simple. Every member of the leadership team is able to support the people on their team in terms of finding a mentor who can help them develop. So most of us have mentors, and that's another great example of things that we do together. We also have a profit share program called The Great Game of Business. We actually open up the books for every single member of the team. So anybody in the call center, anybody on the leadership team, a manager, new hire, it doesn't matter. There's no bad questions. Any ideas you have to help us do better and make us more profitable is fair game. And so we open the books, and at town hall meetings that we have every quarter, we share all of that information, because who knows, maybe somebody who's just been hired knows someone who can help us reduce a bill or what have you. So we do that as well. I guess what you could really call us is a celebratory culture. We do recognize, of course, the hard work that our employees do. We have picnics and we have Friday potlucks, and we do a lot of work, fun events. We've bussed everybody up to Whistler for a celebration before. We have annual conference, and we do Oscar awards, and we do lunch and learns, and we do a lot of fun things. But I think what really makes a difference is coming to an environment where you really feel cared for at work. Not just for the work you do for the company, but also for who you are as a person. And this really instills a feeling of pride. And as you can see here from this photograph, one of our regional managers actually took a banner up to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And we've all done stuff like that. If we're out in the community doing fundraising or anything for our personal beliefs, we often put on a 1-800-GOT-JUNK fleece. It's just part of our culture. So if I look back on my experiences with the company, and I've been with 1-800-GOT-JUNK for 6.5 years, two things come to mind, and I'm gonna end with these two stories. And they both happened within the first few weeks and days that I started. And I think it's probably one of the reasons I'm still with the company. I mean, I've learned a lot about business in general. I've excelled further in my own field of public relations and social media and a lot of those things. But those aren't the two things I want to talk to you about. The first one is the hiring experience. And I discovered after I'd been hired that I was one of 120 applicants for the role. And I was a little bit surprised. My background was in journalism, and I'd gone on to do some marketing. I'd done the typical kind of parent gap. You know, I'd worked in events a little bit, and I was older than some of the people who had hired me, most of them actually. So I was somewhat skeptical because I knew I could handle the job, but I'd never actually had the role of a PR manager before, so it was something new to me. And one of the things I discovered in a conversation shortly after I'd been hired, and this person was talking about, you know, how they'd make a decision. And one of the things they said that I've never forgotten is that anybody can be taught a skill, but it's not easy to teach someone pipe. We hired you for your passion, your integrity, your professionalism, and your empathy. And I think they mentioned they sometimes look for a sparkle in the eye. So now I know why I had so many interviews. It takes time to assess if people have those qualities. And that's probably one of the downsides, but it's positive for us because we do tend to put people through quite a few interviews. And the second point that I wanted to make, again, happened shortly after I started. I was invited into a room with all my co-workers, and the session was actually called 101 Personal Life Goals, and it was led by our CEO, Brian. We all sat down in this room for 20 minutes and furiously wrote down all the things we wanted to achieve in our personal life, in our lifetimes, and then we were encouraged to go away and finish that list within 1 week and come back and share it with as many people as you care to share it with. And the whole focus was that we could help one another, similar to the Can You Imagine wall, for example, or something like that. You could help one another to achieve your dreams and your goals. And I think that was the first time I realized that anybody had really cared about me as a person as opposed to just what I could do for the company. And I think that's what has made all the difference for me.
Well, I think you'll have to agree that there's some inspirational stories that we've just heard about two organizations that have been recognized as great places to work. And I think without going through the list, there's a number of commonalities within these companies. But I think at this point in time is to turn it over to the audience to pick the brains of these folks here about how they've become a great workplace and maybe some things that you are interested in thinking about your own environments. So Lorraine is going to have the mic. So who's going to be first to ask a question?
I know where 1-800 got their name, but Adam, you're on the block. I know what a habanero is. Why is it your company name?
That's actually it's funny actually because we just finished creating a new brand and we've launched it internally, and part of that process was kind of all the stories that have been told about where we got our name from. But what it comes down to is our president, Stephen Fitzgerald's an engineer, and his partner at the time, Neil, was also an engineer. And they had started the company, but they didn't have a name. And so as engineers, they kind of set themselves a goal. They said, by the end of this date, and they had given themselves a date, we're going to have a name for the company. And it happened to be that they were kind of on a bus on the way back from the island where they'd been talking to the BC government about a new project. And it was kind of getting to near the end of the day where they're supposed to have a name. And so they started writing feverishly out all these names, and they kind of went back and forth. And habanero was one because they both they both like spicy food, and I think they had a really spicy like Indian meal or something that day. And literally they're like, okay, that's the one. So that's where they picked their name.
There's a lot of science in that.
Yeah.
Adam, you mentioned that you have your employees complete a survey saying how satisfied they are with the company.
Mhm.
Can you share what those questions are?
I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but they're basically, there's 3 levels, and we didn't come up with the questions. It's a Gallup poll that, it's the questions Gallup has basically figured out that are the things that you need to measure if you're going to measure employee engagement properly. And we've added a couple of our own, but you know, it's basically things like, do I have the tools I need to do my job? Like, does someone at work care about me as a person? Have I got feedback from someone in the last 7 days? It's these types of things, and there's 12 questions. And it's, if you read First Break All the Rules, it's a book that Gallup puts out. It's a really good book. And they speak about this, the process they went through to come up with the questions, and I think the questions are at the back of that book too.
I also have a question for Adam. You mentioned that you have a fitness allowance at Habanero. How much is that within a company, and is that part of the health spending account that you have?
No, so it's $800 a year. It's separate from the health spending account, and it's for services only. I think that due to tax issues, it can't be for goods.
All right, I have a question. Can either of you or both of you share with us how you use social media in your companies to develop your winning culture?
Well, for us, we have an active Twitter account, Facebook, we have a blog, and we also have a YouTube channel, and we, of course, celebrate every time we're recognized on, one of the best companies to work for lists, so that's one way. And we just, we share best practices, talk about what we do in terms of workplace culture, so that's probably, I would say, how we use social media.
Thank you. Adam, did you want to?
Yeah, ours is very similar. We have a blog that anyone can contribute to, and there's 3 areas that we focus on there, kind of the creative stuff, the design stuff, technology, and just things about how we run our business. We're very open, so we post things on there that some people are surprised we post. And then same thing, Facebook, Twitter, and that sort of thing. We use it really to push out notifications about awards and blog posts and job postings, things like that. We could probably be using it more, but especially with the age of people that are applying for us now, it's it's interesting how they find us sometimes.
Thank you.
You both mentioned a long interview process being critical to having the right mix of employees. What does that structure look like at both of your companies?
Okay, from my perspective, the first interview is usually a group interview, so we have our HR coordinator or people person in there with us, and then the leader or the leaders in that department who are hiring people. So we would bring in anywhere from 3 to 6 people at a time, and it's an opportunity not only to go through a number of resumes at one time, but also to see how people react to one another and how they are in a team environment. And it's very much to assess a culture fit at that point. We've brought them in because we know they've got the skills from having seen their resume and checking references, etc. And then it just moves on through there. Typically, I would say maybe 3 more interviews, but it could be several more than that. For me, I'm hiring PR managers, so we usually have a component that involves the time-limited, writing a press release and that type of thing. So I went through 4 interviews, and I think the most that I have hired and put someone through is 4 as well. So that's how it would work. And our CEO typically will come in and meet them as well.
So our process is similar. We're hiring a lot of people that need to have very specific technical skills as developers or people working with the infrastructure and whatnot. But typically someone applies, I call them, we have a half-hour phone screen, that's assuming that their resume kind of looks somewhat appealing. And I'm probing for a lot of the things that we're going to try to get deeper on through the interview process. Their nature of collaboration, how would they feel about an organization with almost no hierarchy, things like that, because some people, they just can't handle that. And then we go from there, we would have a technical interview. We're actually making sure they have the skill set they need. And this is more important for the more technical roles. We then do a series of what we call fit meetings, which are group interviews. There's 2 people at a time. We'll do kind of 2 to 3 hours of those. And we're looking for feedback from each of the individuals, habanero, that are meeting with these people. And that's a time for them to also get to know us a lot more as well. From there, we have a meeting with our Director of Employee Experience, Kat, or myself, depending which one of us has talked to them already. And then what we do is we do a 2-hour comprehensive historical interview with each of them where we're going through their work history in school and whatnot. Really, it's about getting to know them, why they made the decisions they've made in the past, looking for spots where maybe they've had difficulty, how they overcame that, like how they deal with adverse situations, or and also digging more into the collaboration. But the bigger part of that meeting, assuming the first half goes well, is their performance manager is actually sitting in the room, and we start that relationship right there before we've even given them an offer. And it's really about us figuring out how we would work well with that person, what's going to motivate them, how we need to get them engaged very early on to make sure they're going to be productive and feel like they're part of the company early on. And then they also get to meet with Stephen, the president of the company, and that's really to make sure no one ever feels like they can't walk into his office and ask him a question.
Is there anything more about the onboarding process that each of your organizations go through when you've made the decision on the hire? Is there anything specifically that you do at that point?
Yeah, for us, every employee spends time out on the truck, so they get a sense of, what the guys in the front and the gals in the front line actually do. That's what the service we provide. They also spend half a day or a day in the call center, so they hear the customer. The call center agents are the first people who even hear from our customer, right? So everybody has that experience. And the other thing is all of our corporate staff go through the full 1-week training that our franchise partners have to go through. So when someone buys a franchise of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, they travel to Vancouver and they go through a week of training. Our corporate staff join them. If we've got a training session, say coming up in July, who's new between now, the last session and July, and those people will join in so that they can be a part of that and learn all, every aspect of the business. So that would be the main onboarding, and then there's just your typical training and that kind of thing.
Excellent. Adam?
Yeah, we so first day usually is we try to coordinate around Monday mornings. We have a Monday morning meeting, which is very similar to the huddle that you described, and that's where they get introduced to the company. They've already met a lot of us through the interview process. They get taken out to lunch that day. We make sure it's a little thing, but it's usually a surprise to them. So a lot of them have brought their lunch in. They don't need it. And then we have a little bit of what we call a boot camp, which is really about them getting to know more people at Habanero. And so I think one of the biggest things we do, and it seems kind of silly, but they come up with a question that they're going to ask every single person in the company, and they need to go talk to every single person in the company face to face. Or if they're talking to people in Calgary and they're in Vancouver, they call them or meet them over our conferencing system. And then they send an email out with some details about themselves. And everybody's answers to all those questions. So every single time someone starts, we learn a lot more about everyone that works at Habanero. And that stuff gets put on our intranet too, so it kind of lives on. So there's that, and then there's the typical training. Depending on the role, they're going to be shadowing people, or they're going to get some specific technology training and whatnot. And we have a goal, basically, that within 6 months of starting, we're a services organization, so someone is as productive, and we measure that by utilization as someone who's a veteran in the same role. So that's kind of our marker to figure out, like, are they getting what they need to get on board in a timely fashion.
Thanks very much for an inspiring talk with both of you. I have a little story to share about 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Years ago, when my parents were still alive in Edmonton, Alberta, we'd go visit them, and occasionally my husband would go downstairs with my dad and look at all of the junk piled to the ceiling. And my father, who was in his 80s, would say, yep, I got to get down here and clean this mess up one of these days. And my husband would come upstairs and he'd say, oh my God, that is never going to happen. I know who's going to be cleaning this up. So he was partially right, but after my mother passed away, my dad had to move. We had 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We had the fellows come 4 times. And not only were they very professional and very polite, they were very encouraging and kept sort of guiding us and giving us very positive feedback about how we were doing. So that was really nice for us. But I do have a question, and is it Adam? You mentioned this just kind of briefly in your slide, and this was your workplace and the millennials. So I guess that younger generation of workers, I guess after Gen Xers. And it really sounded as though in your workplace, you were looking at something entirely different for that group of individuals, and their values were quite different. And I'm interested to know how you determine what is going to be a great workplace culture based on, I guess, the age group of your employees, or is it sort of one size fits all, or do you find that a younger worker wants something different?
It's an interesting question because we definitely didn't go out with the intent to win that award. I think the way, because each individual really gets to drive their career path and what they're doing and what they're working on at Habanero, this is something like when I'm reading about the millennials and the generation that's kind of coming to the workforce these days, it's something that they're asking for, that they're almost expecting. And so I think we just kind of naturally already do that. Each individual is treated, well, we look at what they want to do and what they want to do in their career and what they need to feel engaged individually. And that's what they're asking for, right? They feel they're all individuals and that they have specific needs and wants. And so we already do that. So I'm not sure we're out like trying to make sure that we win that or doing anything specific for that age group. It seems to be naturally happening.
It's hard when your staff are very geographically spread as opposed to 1 or 2 locations. And if you have small groups of staff in multiple locations, or when your staff are out and about and not necessarily in your office, do you have any suggestions on how to create engagement and take that culture when you're faced with that, where you're not seeing the people every day or where they're just all across the country?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely tell you what we do. So first of all, we have our employees at the junction in Vancouver. We now also have a call center in Toronto, and we do have some staff based in Toronto as well. And we have a field team that is also on staff, and they are spread throughout. There's a handful, of less than 5, throughout the United States mostly. We do have a corporate location in Australia as well. And then we have all of the franchise partners. So there are various levels of engagement and various opportunities to bring everyone together. So the number one thing would be annual conference, where everybody comes together. And that's an opportunity to meet face-to-face with everybody. Then we've got on the flip side, we've got just the daily meeting, the daily huddle, which is recorded for everybody. We also do something called State of the Junk World. State of the Junk World is our quarterly meeting that actually brings all of the franchise partners on board as well, and we do that through sort of a WebEx type of program. And also those regional field members that are out, they go and visit the franchise partners on a regular basis, and they also come to the junction 2-3 times a year or meet in regional areas with the staff. So there are many, many touch points where we have that, face-to-face, and I think that helps us to become more engaged.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap up now, and I'm going to ask Greg Pallone to come up and wrap things up. But I'd like to thank Tanya and Adam, some wonderful insights on workplaces. So if you would join me in just thanking them. Just a couple of things, come to mind in what we've heard. The fact that the word trust, the word, the personal connection, the the role that culture plays in the organization, the role that feeling a sense of pride and cared for it as individuals. And we've heard a lot of great place to work at these Pathways events over the years, and it's amazing how similar they are. So if you're thinking about becoming a great place to work, some of those attributes are something that are ones that you need to think about. I'd like to ask Greg to come up and just wrap things up, and we'll hear from Greg.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this morning, and I hope that some of the information presented is new, and you'll be able to take back to your organizations and implement some ideas that will improve the general wellness of your employees and make your workplace an even better workplace than it is today. To reinforce what you heard on some of the content, in the next few days we'll be sending you out a link to 2 articles from previous issues of Business Health. One is expanding on the skin cancer content that you heard today. Some really good links in that article as well for resources. And the other one on mental health in the workplace. So look for that. And if you don't want to wait for the email, you can get previous issues of Business Health by linking to them from our website. So just go to the TRG website. So that's a wrap for this year. Thank you again for attending. We really appreciate you taking some time out to be with us this morning. And to our sponsors out in the audience, thank you again. We really can't do this without your support. And thank you for your continued support, which you will hear from us in 2013. Thank you.